Welcome to Instruction Discussion, our weekly look at the latest topics and trends in education affecting schools here on Long Island and schools around the world. Whether you're a teacher, parent, or student, listen for tips and strategies to help you navigate the educational landscape. There's a bell. It's time to start today's Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, I'm Kevin Boston Hill, and welcome to Instruction Discussion, where each week we will examine a recent trend or development in education and its impact on Long Island. John Maxwell wrote the book, Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn, as a way for us to understand something that our parents and teachers have been saying for years, that every experience, no matter how traumatic, is an opportunity to learn, whether we learn what not to do next time or we take a deep dive into ourselves. This mantra can be applied to the pandemic as well. While it was a traumatic experience for all of us, there are lessons to be learned. One such lesson that many people are no longer taking lightly is the work-life balance. We all know that all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. But what some of us cannot wrap our heads around is just how to make this happen. We see and hear about others enjoying this Shangri-La experience and wonder, how can I do that? Well, our next guests may have the answer and blueprint about how you can experience better work-life balance. Sal LaGreca has over 40 years of executive leadership experience from billion-dollar businesses to middle-market companies and startups. He was the executive in residence at St. John's University and is a member of the advisory board of the Peter J. Tobin College of Business at St. John's University. Mike Mannix has over 30 years of business experience spanning multiple industries. Throughout his career, Mike has taken a servant leader approach. Combined with his passion for teaching, this methodology has enabled him to lead teams to continuously exceed their goals. Mike is also an adjunct professor at NYU, where he develops and administers classes in leadership management, strategic planning, team building, and business management. Together, Sal and Mike have co-authored the book, The 5 L's, The Gift of a Balanced Life. The book has been touted as a blueprint and effective tool to help individuals find true work-life balance and mental fitness, as well as addressing issues with burnout. Sal LaGreca and Mike Mannix, welcome to Instruction Discussion on 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you so much for having us, Kevin. We're super excited to be here.
Very much.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure to have you all here because, as with anybody else, I want to know how to have better work-life balance. I'm sure most of our listeners are thinking the same thing. I want to do that, too. I want to do it, too. So we have to figure out how can we do that. But before we get into the nuts and bolts, how did we come up with this concept in the first place?
Well, before we answer that,
sure.
Sal and I are all about, because we're both half Italian, so it's about gifts and food. So we don't have any food with us, but we do have some gifts for you, Kevin. So, Mr. LaGreca, would you like to do the honors?
Oh, well, thank you very much. Of course, those of you on the radio, you can't see that they're offering me here a notepad and a pen and a personalized copy of the 5 L's.
Signed copy of our number one best-selling book.
Yes, exactly. It's the number one best-selling book. Thank you. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So back to our question.
Sure.
How did the two of you come together to develop this this fantastic number one bestseller?
Well, it actually happened probably about 4.5 years ago now. And Sal and I met for the very first time. My wife knows his wife. We got invited over to a cocktail party, and the 5 L's came up. Actually, you tell the story better than I do, so why don't you kind of tell them how that went?
Sure. So I didn't know Mike at all. I had met Mike's wife, and it was a Saturday night. We're having a cocktail party at our house in Port Washington, right? I'm in Hasset Bay. And I get a phone call, and it's from somebody who would never call me on a Saturday night. So I feel like I got to take this call. So I excused myself. I said, Mike, I'm sorry. Let me run inside and take this call. I take the call. And it's a guy named Max who worked for me at the time who was calling me to tell me that he was resigning. He was leaving the company. And I said, Max, I've got people here. I really can't talk. Tomorrow's Sunday. I'll give you all day. Let's talk this thing through. I go back out to the deck, and my wife looks at me and sees my face, and I'm not very happy. And she goes, well, what was that about? What happened? I said, well, Max just resigned. And she goes, oh, well, that's your last L. Leave. And he hears it and he goes, what is this last L thing?
Yeah.
So I explained to him the 5 L's. And then Mike says to me, go ahead.
Well, keep in mind, Kevin, I just met the man. So
Right.
he and, my whole purpose, going back to unfortunately losing my father 14 years ago, he always told me that the true measure of success is gauged on the amount of lives you touch and leave for the better.
Yes.
And I spent my entire career trying to be successful. The success you see on social media, on TV, the nice house, the nice car, the C title. Got all that, and I was absolutely miserable because we didn't grow up with money. We struggled,
Right.
and that was my mission. I was going to give my kids the things I didn't have growing up. It wasn't until losing him to cancer and seeing the turnout and the amount of lives that he had touched, hundreds and hundreds of people every single night out the door and around the block. 80% of them was his students because my dad was also, besides being a pharmacist and captain of the volunteer ambulance crew, he was an adjunct professor teaching paramedics. And he taught right to the very last day. He couldn't do the other things because he was so sick.
Right.
But he taught because he was going to change lives right to the end. And that's when I realized my dad would be the most successful man I would ever meet. And I started changing my life to how can I help people? How can I make their lives better? That's why I started teaching at NYU, changing one at a time. And then when I heard the 5 L's, I was blown away. I was like, poor Sal. I just met the man. I'm like, dude,
more, yeah.
you need to write a book. And his answer was kind of like,
I said, I'm not going to write a book. I'll read a book. I'm not going to write a book.
Right.
And that didn't go very far because I think it was Monday or Tuesday. This guy shows up at my house.
I stalked him.
With white pads and pens and markers and said, we're going to write the book, right? So I invite him in and I start talking about it. And I realized Mike's got a lot of the background, adjunct professor of leadership at NYU. And then I said, you know what? Why don't you write the book with me? And that's how that started. And here we are.
Yeah.
And here we are. Many, I don't know exactly how many millions of copies later, but we're out there. So what are the 5 L's? We heard one of them is leave. So what are the other 4? And is there a particular order that they go in?
Yeah, let me tell you about it.
Sure.
First of all, let me tell you how I came up with it. It was a long time ago, actually. I'd just been admitted to the partnership of a global firm, and the firm would choose a newly admitted partner and send that partner to Harvard, to the executive leadership program. And I was fortunate to be selected that year. So I go to this leadership program. It's a classic Harvard case study approach to solving business issues, except one class was very, very different. It was the psychology of success. That was the title of the class. And this professor comes in, and I'm in a room with about 35 people, all C-level, very successful people from all over the globe. And he asks a very simple question. How would you define success? And he goes around the room and he's asking everyone that question. And I can't wait for him to come to me because in my mind at that time, I am the definition of success.
Right.
I'm very young. I made partner in a firm that I wanted to be partner in. So I've got the title and now I have the financial freedom. So for me, and it changes as you go on, I thought that was the definition of success, money and the title. And so this professor comes back maybe 2 days later and says to everyone in the room, I'm going to play back all of your definitions of success. And many of those definitions were similar to mine.
Right.
But boy, Kevin, there were answers that I didn't relate to at the time. Like, how about being a better person, a better parent, a better partner, etc. So this professor comes back and plays it back. And at the end of it, he basically says there's 12 things or 10 things in your life you have to be successful. That's what you guys all told me. And I'm sitting here going, 10 things? I'm not going back to the operating committee of the firm that just sent me to Harvard and tell them, guess what? All you successful people, you need 10 things in your life to be successful.
Right.
It's not going to happen. So I realized that many of these 10 things overlapped. And so I started going and putting them into an order that made sense to me. And I said, I got to get them down to a smaller number. So 5. I got them down to 5, basically. And I said, that's a good number, 5 fingers, 5 toes. And then oddly enough, I realized as I was doing that some of them were beginning with the letter L. And I said, wow, if I can get them all down to 5 and all beginning with the letter L, which is the beginning of my last name, I am not going to forget these things.
There you go.
So,
Yeah.
So here's the 5 L's in a high overview, okay? The first L is love, because without it, all else fails.
Right.
And we're not just talking about a relationship love. It really starts with you, with self-love.
Yep.
That's the first L, love. The second L is laughter, right? Do not take yourself too seriously in life, because guess what? You're going to make mistakes.
Yes.
You're going to fail, and guess what? It's okay. It's all right. So love laughter. The third is labor. As human beings, we are wired to produce and wired to work. So if you're going to work and produce, do it with passion and purpose. Find something that you have passion and purpose in. So we have love, laughter, labor. The fourth L is leisure. You have to find time to recharge your own personal battery.
Yes.
Critical.
Right? You need your me time, as we call it, whatever that might be.
Right.
You find that me time, and you do it every single day. So love, laughter, labor, leisure. And the fifth L, for so many people, is the hardest of all of the 5 L's, and that's leave. That's that leave we talked about
Right.
leave. Know when to go.
Yes.
Know when to pivot and adjust your sails and manage and accept the change in your life. So that's the 5 L's: love, laughter, labor, leisure, leave. What we like to say is alone they have purpose, but together in a balanced fashion, they have power.
Yes.
And that's the 5 L's.
And I see that you like this alliteration because you have the 5 L's, and then what they mean, you used P's, because not only did you mention the power and the purpose,
Right.
but I think even in your explanation, there were a few other P's that you had mentioned in there. So it's like you love the alliteration going on here, which is fine. It makes things easier to remember.
Exactly.
Right? Yes.
Exactly.
Now, going through those 5, I think people would definitely say, okay, self-love, I can get with that. Laughter, we know that laughter is the best medicine, so I can get with that.
Scientifically proven, actually.
Exactly, so I can get with that. But then when you get to the not just the labor is one thing. It's like, we all go to work. We can deal with that. But then we get to the next L. I think that's where the leisure, that may be one of the first stumbling blocks that people experience. Because if they're so busy working with the labor,
That's right.
then how do we get to leisure?
Correct.
So how do we get to leisure?
Yeah.
I'll take that?
Yeah, sure.
All right, great. So first of all, Kevin, I think the important thing is, we talked about the 5 L's high level, but, if anyone reads the book or, takes one of our training classes, because, we realized if we were going to change lives, the book was just a tool.
Yep.
And we had to get out there and teach it, so that's what we've been doing. But all the L's roll up into what Sal said, the very first L is self-love, okay? And there's such a thing called the oxygen mask theory. And most people say self-love. Oh, no, that's selfish. Actually, it's selfless,
no.
Yes.
right? You're a better person. You're a better partner. You're a better parent. You're a better period if you take care of yourself. And it's just the oxygen mask is if you're on a plane, right? Who do they tell you to put the oxygen mask on? It's not the person next to you. It's you, right? So once you start practicing self-love and you start doing something for you every day, the other L's start to fall in line, right? And to your point, the first L that we all sacrifice is leisure, right? And that's a problem. So we all walk around with these cell phones, right? And I'll say this at one of our, keynotes or during our presentations. I'll hold up this number, like everyone has one of these, right? And they're like, yeah, of course we do. What happens when it gets down to 20%? Everyone's like, oh my God, I go and I charge it. I'm like, you freak out. You run across the room, you plug it. I mean, if you've ever been in an airport, everyone's tethered to the wall, right? They're tethered to the wall. So you can't tell me that your device is more important than you are, right? And what they found, and actually Harvard Business Review put this out just recently, is people that took 10 days or less off, right, had about a 35.2% chance of getting an increase, a raise, or a bonus. People that took more than the 10 days had 65.7% chance of getting a raise,
So
increase,
your
or bonus.
double by taking more days off.
Because they came back as their best selves. And what we've also found out is when you do take that time to step, just like your phone operates better, your laptop, everything operates better when you charge it, so do you. So if you take that time to recharge your batteries, no matter how long it is, 5 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, taking that time to disconnect and recharge, you'll actually be more productive and you'll be more successful and you'll be a happier person.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes total sense. I mean, even if you think about it, because I'm also a comic book buff. So I'm always watching, reading comic books about Superman and so forth. And even Superman had his Fortress of Solitude, right? He had his
that's
place,
called a man cave now, right?
Well, exactly. We call it a man cave. But it was that one place he could go where no one else knew where it was, that he could recharge his batteries. We get away from it all.
Yeah.
And if a fictional character can do that, then why can't we?
Exactly.
We have to.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. That makes sense. That makes sense. You are listening to Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Kevin Boston Hill, and our guests today are the authors of the book, The 5 L's, The Gift of a Balanced Life, and leaders of the Unparalleled Performance Corporate Training Program, Sal LaGreca and Mike Mannix. So once we get to leisure, you said the last one, last L is often really the toughest because we have this thing in our head that we have to see everything through to the end. No matter how rough things get, it's really hard for us to do that pivot.
Sure.
Yes.
Although the pandemic showed us otherwise. Everybody, you either pivot or you fail.
Right.
So, but
You're forced into it.
But how do we, if we're not forced in those situations, how do we tell ourselves it's time to leave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm going to tell everyone that's listening something that they should have been told a very long time ago. So, Kevin, have you ever procrastinated and got mad at yourself for it?
Oh, of course.
Right. Most people do.
Yes.
Right. We're actually pre-programmed that way from prehistoric times to avoid change. And no one's told us that, but it's actually scientifically proven. So back in those days, change was bad. Bad was scary. Scary meant something was eating you. Okay.
Right.
So it's a fight or flight mechanism, and you avoid it like the plague. But the great part, and by the way, you'll figure out between the two of us, I'm the science data geek. There's such a thing called neuroplasticity. That means you can actually retrain your brain and create new pathways. Once you realize if you're programmed this way, you can reprogram yourself, right? So long story short is you can, using tools, which we actually lay out for folks, it's all about change management and embracing change. And we actually do this with a lot of our classes and in a lot of our lectures. We'll ask everyone, because we're very emotional creatures, right?
Yes.
And when we hear something, we attach to an emotion, but we also subconsciously attach that emotion to a color, right? And when we go through love, laughter, labor, leisure, leave, you usually hear the same colors all the way around. But through our research, we found out that 95% to 97% of the time, when you hear leave, people say a dark color like black.
Right.
Because they actually equate it to the end of something or a death.
Right.
But what we found out is the people that were the happiest, that were the most balanced, they actually saw a change as opportunity, and they would say a light color like white or yellow or even pink sometimes, right? So there's 3 things you can count on in life: death, taxes, and change, okay?
That's right.
Right? So once you learn to embrace change and see it as a positive and as opportunity, you're going to be a much happier person. Because if you can't get there, it's going to be very hard for you to find balance. Because as you said, we had to realize through the pandemic, change has to happen, but it was forced upon us.
Yes.
You have to be able to embrace it and not have it so forced upon you that, oh my God, I have to do it, type of thing.
I know that the book itself is available for anybody to get to, whether they go, I'm sure, in Amazon or any other books where books are sold. How can people use the book? And I'm sure, and how have you used the book in your training?
What behind every chapter of the book, the book is easy to read. It's 5 chapters.
And I also noticed that the language of the book is very simple. You would think that when you see the title, the 5 L's, you would think it's going to be very clinical.
Yeah.
Right.
But the language is not clinical at all.
No.
Kevin, it's so far from that. It's so simple and it's so easy. And it's 5 chapters, 5 L's. Right? And behind each chapter is something that we love to talk about. It's a self-assessment tool, a 5L self-assessment tool. And it's 10 questions.
Yep.
And it's either a yes or a no when you answer these questions. If it's a maybe, then that's a no.
Right.
And we like to say that if you can get 7 out of 10 yeses, then you can feel that you are balanced in that particular L, right?
Right.
Yeah, and also on our site.
Yeah, one of the things Sal and I also want to do is because, sometimes people might not read and they want to listen to the audiobook.
Yeah.
We've also developed on our website is a online self-assessment. You can save it to your phone. You can take it every day. You answer 10 questions under each L, and then a bar chart comes up.
Oh, wow.
And it shows you what L you're off in. And Kevin, I wish I had this 30 years ago because my L's were way out of whack. I only had one L, and it was labor.
Yep.
I didn't have self-love. I took myself way too seriously. I never knew when to take off and leave. No way.
No way. Exactly.
Yeah, there was no way I was going to leave from the mindset that I had. And it put me in the hospital 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Right? So one of the things that we talk about is every day you have to get up and choose balance. So you have to look at what L you're off in and choose it and readjust. And I'm telling you, that's what's going to get you through the difficult times. We have been teaching this for the last 4 years, thousands of people. We travel around the country, even have a global client as well, too. And once they go through one of our programs or go through the book, they're like, people actually come up to us, like sometimes in tears, like, "Oh my God, I needed this. This changed my life."
Yeah, it changed my life. We hear that a lot. Yeah.
And I think that just from reading about because you have your personal experiences in the book as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Sal, you had a heart condition that led to you realizing that you really needed to take care of yourself.
Yeah, that was I was faced with that, and I made that decision. And but the other thing, as Mike said, he had one L. I had one L, and I'm the creator of the 5Ls. And I was running a $2 billion global company, and I was on the road 60% of my time. I was married at the time, my son Matthew, and I lost a lot. My marriage failed, and I became an absentee dad, and it took me a long time to using the 5Ls to bring that all back, and I have to say things are just wonderful now. So I'm a great example of that.
Yeah, and I know that you spent, I don't know how much time you actually spend collecting all of the interviews of the different people in the book as well, but I think having all those different examples will help our readers and our listeners to find some commonality, some common ground that they might be able to see themselves, like some other people who gave you those testimonials earlier did.
Yeah.
What are some of the other ways that you're doing to kind of spread that message of the 5 Ls to make sure that as many people as possible are really listening to themselves?
Yeah. Well, the book is a tool, right? Mm-hmm. So the book is one way to get it out there, and we're proud to say and happy to say that we, hit number 1 on 2 new release bestseller lists, which was
congratulations.
So thank you.
Thank
which
you
was
so
so
much.
exciting for us. Like we did not expect that. But what's really cool is to be able to get reports, and they're tracking where the books are being sold, and to see it, selling in Australia, over in the UK, over in Switzerland or France or India. They're all over the world, and that to us is just mind blowing. I mean, we actually still get giddy about it, like, oh my God. But what we're doing now is to really make that change. So the book is one way, but obviously we have a lot of social media out there. We're going out, we're teaching it, and we're like literally giving people real tools. And then if we're not doing a full blown class, we're at least doing an overview, right? So that's more like the keynotes or the big events. We've been doing a lot of events. We've been definitely trying to get out in as front as many people as possible. And just to back up for a second, thank you for pointing out the interviews, because one of the things that was really important for us was not just to put in our 70-plus years combined experience. It was to interview people from all different walks of life, right? So from generals to CEOs to sports personalities.
New York Yankees.
There you go. Go Yanks. Because people want to hear stories, right? And to your point, they want to be able to relate to it.
Yep.
And even to your point with the language, if you look in our book, even the font is a special size because we didn't want it too small that people won't read or too big where it would look childish. So enough where it made people comfortable. Even, I know it's going to sound, we're very type A. Even the color of the paper is a pleasing color to the eye because we wanted it to apply and be, adopted by as many people as possible.
And you mentioned about you didn't want it to seem too childish as far as the font size and everything. Have you thought about creating a version for middle school, high school?
It's a fantastic question,
Mr.
LaGreca.
So much for that question. Well, let me just say, one of the people that we interviewed for the book, Randy Bynum, is the CEO of Girl Scouts of Nassau County.
Know her well.
And she was an amazing interviewee. She said to me, or to us one day, you've got to get this message out to the youth of America. Have you thought about doing something? And we said, we would love to. And she said, why not a children's illustrated book? And I collect children's illustrated books, illustrated children's books. I have 4 grandkids. So when she said that, I said, wow, what a great idea. We should be doing that. So if you don't mind, I want to tell you a real quick story about that. When Mike and I worked together in our office, Mike's got a dog named Finn. And it's a furry little beautiful dog. Wonderful.
He likes Sal more than me, I'm just saying.
Whatever. So I know that when you want to tell a story, a children's book story, it's got to be seen and heard from the eyes of not a human being, basically.
Right.
It should be, a dog, a cat, or something like that. Like Pete the cat, which I buy for my grandkids. And I'm looking at the dog Finn, and I say to Mike one day, I go, I got it. And he goes, you got what?
And is it contagious?
Yeah, exactly.
I said, I got the book. And he goes, what is it? I said, Finny and the 5 Ls.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Kevin, I think I went home that night, and within 2 nights I wrote Finney and the 5 L's.
Wow.
Taking the 5 L's and then we Mike and I added a lot to it, and we got Randy Biden's input on it, and that book is coming out in the next month or 2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I think to give you a little bit more support in that, create a workbook.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Create a workbook and
Exactly.
package that together. Then, because having worked in schools,
Yes.
I know that's what any principal is going to ask for. Is there
Sure.
a workbook that comes with that we can just make it a plug and play with our students and they'll eat it up?
Yeah.
So I think you're on the right track with that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I have to tell you though, Kevin, people see the book and they're like, "Oh, is this a corporate thing?" It actually, we're in every aspect of every type of business and entity that you can think of, like hospitals, higher education, even high schools. I have to tell you, the college students and the high school, they love this because it's how to deal with stress, anxiety, and burnout. We actually did a big wellness down on a campus down in Florida, and they see us there with our books, and they're like, "What are you guys doing here?" And we're like, "Well, it helps you with stress, anxiety, and burnout." They're like, "Oh my God, I need a copy!" Right? So they come running over. But we're in every industry you can think of because almost everyone is dealing with stress, anxiety, and burnout. And I think we all just want something to help us get through the day to day.
Yeah.
And that's what the 5 L's is. And I wish I had this 30 years ago.
So, our time is really starting to run down a little bit, but if you had to leave our audience with one final thought about achieving the proper work-life balance in whatever area that they're in, what would that thought be?
It's something that you need to think about every single day of your life and make that choice to do that. It doesn't come naturally. You have to make a decision, a conscious decision, and choose to find balance. And the 5 L's is the way to do that.
Mike?
Yeah, so from my side, I mean, it's hard to follow Mr. LaGreca over here. Just another component of that for me, because I didn't do this for the longest time, Kevin, and to be totally candid, I didn't think I was worth it, and a lot of people don't. You need to choose that self-love. And once you actually start taking care of yourself, you're going to be a better person all the way around. You're going to have a better balance in your life. The other 5 L's will start to fall in place, but you have to choose it. You have to choose balance. You have to get up every single day. One of our other interviewees, Candace Corby, one of the most dynamic executive global leaders that we've met, she says, you got to get up every day and choose balance. It's a choice. And that's actually in our book, and that's how we should close out our programs as well.
And also, Kevin, when you do that and you have that balance, it is contagious.
Yes.
People feed off of that positive that you have. So it's a good.
Thank you. Well, we would certainly like to thank our guests today, the authors of the book, The 5 L's, The Gift of a Balanced Life, and leaders of the Unparalleled Performance Corporate Training Program, Sal LaGreca and Mike Mannix, for coming on to our show today.
Thank you so much for having us, Kevin. This was great.
Once again, my name is Kevin Boston Hill, and thank you all for listening to Instruction Discussion, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.